the bigotry against Muslims and Jewish people in the United States. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also a member of the International Advisory Council on the United States Institute of Peace and Chairman Emeritus of Refugee International. He has received many honors, as I'm sure you can imagine, including being recognized as an outstanding American by choice, which I think is really interesting, by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, as well as one of the best CEOs in the United States by Worth magazine. So help me in extending another warm welcome to Farooq.
Thank you very much.
So today you are a successful CEO. You've been through shareholder activism, which we'll talk about later, and also clearly a humanitarian. But give us a sense of what led you down this path. Was there a defining moment, or is it just part of who you are?
Well, first of all, I'm very pleased to be here. And, it's, who you are is also a part of your, where you come from. And I was born in Kashmir, an area of conflict. So we saw conflict, we saw families, our own families being separated. So I came from an area where activism was important. I also happened to be, when I was there, always a captain of a cricket team. So that's a very important activism, To running a cricket team is something that you are involved with. In cricket, say unlike baseball, the captain plays with the team, strategizes with the team, and cheers with the team. So you really are an activist.
So you've been CEO for a short time.
Yes.
Give us a sense of what it was like when you first became CEO and how that role of CEO has changed over time.
Well, first of all, when you think of it, that Ethan Allen is a great, iconic American brand, established 86 years back by two New Yorkers who went to Vermont, established a mill in the Northeast Kingdom, and started making early American colonial furniture. Ethan Allen was known for American traditional furniture. And for me to get involved, and I did, I went to school here at night keep in mind, I came from the beautiful mountains of Kashmir to beautiful Brooklyn when I was 20 years old. And from Brooklyn, I went to NYU at night. So while I was there, I was, of course, all kinds of jobs. And my grandfather in Kashmir, on his own, decided to send me 12 wicker baskets of arts and crafts and said, sell them, and it's going to help you go to school. Well, I had a little apartment in Brooklyn. Anyway, my logistics started where to keep them, where to sell them. And Bloomingdale's became my first customer. So it was sort of, when you think of it, and it was because of that, I also somebody introduced me to the chairman of Ethan Allen, and who said, I'm having trouble getting this fabric from Kashmir. One of his merchants said, and he asked me, he said, can you help? I said, absolutely. I had no idea where the fabric was. So I started in the fabric business. And I started as, these are all part of being an activist.
Absolutely.
Activist has got to be your life.
Yeah.
I started, when I was going to NYU, I saw an ad it said bookkeeper on Canal Street. So I asked somebody, what's a bookkeeper? Does he keep books? So I'd never seen a calculator in my life. Anyway, I went there, I got a job. I somehow...
So there's a fearless streak.
No, I convinced him that I knew bookkeeping. He did ask me, he said, where do you learn bookkeeping? I said, England. The only thing I had done was change a plane there. But anyway, you have to sort of improvise, right?
Yes. Yes.
Especially all the communications folks there. So anyway, I learned bookkeeping, I don't know how, but anyway, a year later he said to me, why don't you go and work on Wall Street? Because NYU Business School, where I went to, used to be on Church Street near Wall Street. I said, what would I do there? He said, tell them you're a financial analyst. I was studying marketing. But anyway, I walked to the 16th floor, I got a job with Bear Stearns and started my career in finance. And 6 years later, I became the chief financial officer of a company called Rothschild Inc. I don't know why, but somehow I did. And that's where I met I was introduced to the chairman of Ethan Allen, as I said, and later on, Ethan Allen became a customer. I gave my job. We sent into a partnership. And Ethan Allen after 8 or 10 years of a partnership, the chairman invited me to work at the company. And anyway, then I took his job, which was, as I said, 33 years back. That was the plan. In fact, he asked me to come to work in Danbury, Connecticut. And I said, I don't want to leave New York. And he said, why? What would make you leave? I said, I don't want to come here, but it'll have to be your job. Anyway, I was young, foolish. I got the job. But Ethan Allen was a great American company. It had 30 manufacturing plants from Maine, Massachusetts, New York, all the way to the Carolinas and even to California at that time. But the culture was, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And it's my way or the highway. And I said, well, that is not the way to run it. So it was, the first few years, the objective was to communicate. You're all in communication. So I went on the road. I went to the factories. I had town hall meetings. And the objective was to change the culture of a company that was, mired in tradition. A few years later, we had to change our product lines. We had to go from early American colonial to where we are today, and we're still constantly reinventing. So communications is critical, and internal communications to me is more important or as important as external communications. If you don't convince your people, nothing much happens.
And you talked about constantly reinventing. So give us a sense over time. We've been talking about purpose here. You clearly went in and you made a lot of changes when you first arrived. But how do you know when it's time to reinvent again?
You have to constantly reinvent. As I said, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of being at the head of this organization for over 30 years. Today, if you do not reinvent, you're out of business. Yeah. I tell you this, I just came last night from San Francisco because we just introduced something that a year back we would have thought was not something we should be doing. And Tuesday morning, we had a press release that we have made a collaboration with Amazon. A year back, we wouldn't have thought of it. About last summer, I did contacted Jeff Bezos, and I said, we have not had any collaborations until about 2 years back. We took our granddaughter to Disney World, and I saw her eyes, and I called up. At that time, I knew Bob Iger, too. So we collaborated. Our first collaboration in 85 years was Disney. We just launched an Ethan Allen Disney Magical Home a couple of months back. But Amazon, something we would not have thought through. But today, you are going to be either disrupted or you better be a disruptor. And Amazon is a disruptor. They're an innovator. So we said if we have to partner, but on our terms. Yep. That took some... But to do this, we had to communicate this message. So I've been on the road in LA on Monday talking to all our team members. Tuesday, I was in San Diego. Wednesday, yesterday in San Francisco. We had webinars, communications. Because look at this. If you don't invent and reinvent yourself constantly, you're out of business.
Absolutely. There was this great Business Week headline once that said, "At Ethan Allen, selling furniture and tolerance." I love that. What forces turned Ethan Allen into a socially responsible enterprise, being a furniture company?
Well, look at this. Ethan Allen, when these great innovators from New York went to this Northeast Kingdom, they were working with communities. Yeah. They were running the water supply. And so the tradition of the company was that you're going to take care of your communities. Right from, and that's what I got involved with. So when we say we're in a furniture company, we're more than that. We're one of the few vertically integrated companies from a concept of an idea to design, to manufacture, to retail and marketing. But today you have to make sure that you have to take care of your people. We still make 75% of our products right here in North America. Mm-hmm. Not easy. Right. We have to meet environmental standards. And in fact, in the last few days, I've been talking to all our associates. And I said, we've been listening to and reading about the fact that they're going to reduce environmental regulations. I said, don't even read them. We have worked so hard to have the best environmental policies, and I want that increased, not reduced. Right. So we got to get that message across.
That's right. It's excellent.
If you have a chance, go to our website and you're going to see the kind of things we have been doing. Fortunately, we have done it over many, many years. If you start it now, you're not going to do it.
And I love how you talk about Ethan Allen really being in the fabric of communities, so it's natural for you to take these stands. You have 10 common sense principles, and all of our companies have some sort of principles that are part of our vision, mission, or our purpose. But you have one principle that I don't know that any of our companies would have. It's called justice. And these principles, you say, you leverage to evaluate candidates and their fit with the culture. So give us a sense of how you created your principles, why justice, and how do you measure people against that?
Well, I think every enterprise, every person must operate on certain principles. So about 25 years back, or maybe 30 years back, I said, well, let's develop principles, and 10 is a good number. Moses started with it. So we said 10 is a good number, so let's have 10 leadership principles. The first one is hard work. Yeah. It's all on our website too. Leaders have to work hard. If we don't work hard, how are we going to tell people to work hard? Then we have a principle which says speed. And our principle at Ethan Allen is if it's something good, we better do it fast. And we use the U.S. Marines principle that if you are 70% ready, go. You're not going to be 100% ready. So now the question of justice is an important one. Justice does not mean giving things away. Justice means treating people with dignity. First is our customers. We are a brand that is known and desired. Many years back, one of the first things I did 30 years back is I didn't like the idea that our prices were higher in California than in the East Coast because we delivered our products from our eastern plants. We said, we're going to deliver our products at one cost nationally. It was a silly thing to say at that time because nobody had done it. But at the end of the day, 30 plus years later, we have one of the best logistics network. Plus, justice helped us create the best logistics network. So similarly, when we take a look at the concept of justice, it also means that you have to be completely transparent. Our messages to our employees, to our board members, I'm very pleased that 2 of our board members have just joined us here. And Tara Stakem is executive chair of the Cushman Wakefield, and Mary Garrett just left IBM as the chief marketing officer. And these 2 ladies, they recently joined our board in the last year and a half. They wanted to attend this meeting. We have a great board, and they have to believe in it. They have to believe in the concept that we're going to be dealing fairly. But it's got to start across the board. How you treat people, how you treat your customers. And it also means the biggest principle of justice is you be willing to lose for a principle. If you're not willing to lose, well, you can't always gain. Yeah.
This whole conference has been about the sweeping activism all over the world. Yeah. We just heard a great panel about shareholder activism. So first, as a CEO, give us a sense of what it's like to take these public stands and the calculus, how you think through it. And then maybe you wouldn't mind sharing with us your experience from shareholder activism based on the panel we just had and learnings for you from that.
The thing is this, first of all, you have to have a balanced approach. For instance, while you mentioned a number of those things, but I've also chaired the National Retail Federation, which is the largest federation of retail. In other words, yes, I've been involved with the Refugees International, but you've got to be involved also areas that are of business. Yep. I have chaired the American Home Furnishings Alliance. I'm on the advisory board of the New York Stock Exchange. Then I'm on Refugees International and the International Rescue Committee and a few other organizations like that. In other words, you have to balance it. Because if you don't balance it and you're only one way, by one way I mean only on the activist side, social activist side, it could be a problem. Now at Ethan Allen, our whole culture is based on making sure that we operate openly. We take, whether it's environmental issues, whether it is any issues relating, like for instance, I tell you this, that we opened in the last 10 years 2 manufacturing operations, one in central Mexico and one in Honduras. Most of it in the United States. But we did not have, for instance, on our sofas and chairs, we can't find people here who are willing to, are cutting and sewing. So we went to the middle of Mexico, right in the farms. We bought a 30 or 40,000 square foot operation. Now it's 700,000 square feet. We have 700 people. We took from the farms. We sent people from here to teach them. But we found they don't have transportation, so we operate 27 buses. They don't get good food, so we give them food. We put up a medical doctor. Now, similarly in Honduras, now with all this happening about the possible border tax and all of that stuff, people are concerned. I tell them, don't worry. We have maintained manufacturing at the United States at a time when we could have made more profits if we had taken it all offshore. We didn't. And you folks keep on working. Whatever happens, we're going to keep you working. You've got to tell those things. Yes. And you know what? They're working hard.
Yeah. Any learnings from the Shareholder Activism Experience?
You know what? I was trying to remember who they were. I've forgotten. They're only 2 years back. No, seriously. But it was an activist. And Joel Frank, is that partner still here? Well, no, they love. When I was looking at Andy Brimmer, who's one of their partners, is also a director at the International Rescue Committee.
Okay.
Only one person we asked to give us some advice was him, and he came to us. Mm-hmm. We had this activist 2 years back came in and said that you folks have owned a lot of real estate, sell it. I said, we won't sell it. It doesn't make sense. We are manufacturing in Vermont and in North Carolina and the Blue Ridge Mountains and all of that, and we have a retail which we keep on, because the short-term thinking was sell it and lease it back. We said, don't make sense. I said, I don't mind selling it, but I want short-term leases, or we can cancel them. That's not what they want. Anyway, they said, if you don't do it, we will. No, first they came in and said, we want to partner with you to take the company private again. I took the company private in a management buyout about almost 28, 29 years back, and then we went public again. He said, let's go have public. And I said, be private, to a partnership. Mm-hmm. And we said no. And then finally they said, we want you to sell. We said, it does not make sense. Then they threatened us, if you don't do that, we'll have a proxy fight. Mm-hmm. We said, go ahead, it's a free country. And they did, and they lost. All right.
All right. What advice would you give to other CEOs that want to take stands? What's the process you use to measure the risk and reward of it? And then who do you advise? Your board of directors, your customers, employees? Give us a sense of how that works.
It has to be part of your DNA. You can't all of a sudden just come in and all of a sudden take a position. For us, it's all very natural. Yeah. Treating people fairly is part of our DNA. Yeah. Taking care of environmental is part of our DNA. Safety is. In fact, we just partnered with Disney, and I'm glad we did, because they also have a very strong social responsibility, in which every place where a product that is with a Disney name has to be inspected by a third party. And so we looked at it, we said, well, we have pretty good standards, we'll even make it better, stronger. So in other words, it's part of our culture. Now, certainly our board of directors also believe that the things we are doing are right, and also they would not join us if they did not believe in our culture. Right. So when they come in, they understand it, that this is the way we are. So it is all very, very natural, and of course, I discussed with it, and in fact, you mentioned this Muslim-Jewish Council. I mean, that is something that was not an easy decision. When the American Jewish Committee came to me and they said, we'd like you to co-chair with Stanley Bergman. He runs a company called Henry Schein. And first I said, you got to get somebody else who's more versed in religion than me. I have enough knowledge, but they said, no, we need you. And so I agreed. And last year, and it has been involved quite a bit in terms of getting people. It's bipartisan, first of all. It has Republicans, independents, Democrats, leaders, business leaders, religious. If it wasn't bipartisan, I would not have done it. So I think today, when you talk of activism, you have to work very, very hard in this world that is so divided to unite people. Mm-hmm. So the reason I joined it is because it's important for us to unite people. Yeah. And that is the mission of this. That is to unite people and to speak up for positives rather than attack anybody.
And how do you, especially in this environment and with that group, maintain hope and focus for that work when there are so many reasons to be discouraged at times?
Well, of course, it's a tough situation. It's not easy, but you have to make an effort to unite people. Yeah. You have to do that. And I think that, again, it has to be done positive. Not easy, because when we did this last year, and of course when President Trump and his administration came in, the thought was that we did it to oppose. No, it is not. Yeah. It is to get the message across that there should be sensible policies. We should make sure that, yes, certainly the country should be safe. Nobody's against the fact that we should not have security. We should even make sure that people who come in here are vetted. All those things are important, but how you do it is important, and how you treat people is important.
In this environment, earlier today, a speaker mentioned that leaders will need to have a great combination of courage and humility. And one of the things that the group were talking about this session is it's very unique to you that you are this activist, but you are also a very humble person. So how do you balance that? And how would you help your fellow peers and CEOs on what does that look like to operate with courage but remain humble?
Well, first, you can't take yourself too seriously. I mean, you can't. I think that you have to, it starts by, if you say the word humble, I think it got to start by treating everybody with dignity. Yeah. If you don't treat people with dignity, then there's no, and you think that somehow you are bigger, stronger than anybody else. I go to plants, and in fact, Mary, she was with me last month. Mary, I invited a couple of our board members to come to our plants in western North Carolina, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Well, these are folks, I've known them for 25, 30, 40 years. These are people who work. And I must have shaken hands with about 500, 700 of them. They came to shake hands with me, and maybe a few hundred also gave me hugs. It doesn't happen unless you take care of people. I want them to work hard. They understand that. That's not an option. We've got great quality, but you got to treat people fairly, with dignity. And my message is about the same when I spoke to them. My message to them about our business is exactly the same when I talk to our board of directors or when I talk to anybody else. You can't have different messages.
Right. When we talked on the phone, you gave us insights and when you were creating your leadership principles and the culture change that you were driving, that created some ripple effects in your company. And so it's important, you've said many times, for this to be a part of who you are. But what if you have executives that are just not on that same page? Tell us how that happened at your company and what was the result.
They leave.
Do you help them leave, or they?
Well, yeah, it works both ways.
Yes.
The reason is this: if they can't fit in the culture, they're not going to stay. Yeah. We don't want people who are arrogant. We want our leaders to set the example of hard work. Yeah. And if you go to our organization, you would not see if somebody's a vice president or somebody is very, very junior. You won't see the difference. They either fit in, they don't. When I got involved, as I said, the concept was, the thinking was, it's my way or the highway. It was a very structured company, and that's the way it was. That's what most companies were. So I decided, how do I change it? So I did a crazy thing. I invited 5,000 of our factory workers to our headquarters in Danbury, Connecticut, 300 at a time. It was crazy, it's like a zoo. We also operate an Ethan Allen hotel. So if any one of you folks wants to go to Danbury, all right, we have a hotel. Nice hotel, for a conference center.
So what were you doing with the 300?
What we were telling them was this, that the main job of a leader, their leaders were there too, the main job of a leader is to help their people become better. I mean, that is something from time immemorial. What's the job of a leader? Many people think the job of the leader is to take most, keep everybody down. I said, no, the job of the leader is a better, and then I said something more revolutionary. I said, if they don't help you become better, you have a right to revolt. So our management said, it's crazy, what are you telling them? I said, only if you don't help them.
Right.
Well, 70% of them didn't want to help, they retired.
70%.
But it was at that they needed to retire, but they decided to retire.
Okay.
So, because, it's a different environment.
Yes.
And I tell you, the amazing culture we built from that, and the people at Ethan Allen have long tenure, people who work, whether we have 200 Ethan Allen design centers that we operate. We have 200 management, and 95% of them came from the ranks.
That also shows a great future then for the people that have joined your company.
Yeah.
we obviously have a room full of chief communication officers here who would be very interested in your thoughts on how is your CCO involved in the decisions that you make, even the personal ones, like joining the Muslim and Jewish Council. Are they involved intimately in those decisions and in your communications both inside and outside the company? I notice you have your own website. So tell us about that relationship.
Well, we are very close in terms of the way we operate and the way the messages get. Even our board members are here. For our board members to understand this business, they just can't understand this business coming 4 times a year, 5 times a year. And, and that's not the way. So what I do is this. Almost consistently, I get about 50 reports a week. A lot of those folks don't report to me, but we have created a culture that any of our senior people reporting to anybody else, they send a copy to me.
Okay.
So many of them I send to them, so that they understand what this business. How can they understand? And even though we don't go out and buy companies, we have grown internally. So from that perspective, it's simple, yet we're a vertically integrated company from operating a sawmill. We go to the woods. We have, and talking of environmental things, in Vermont, we burn 0 oil. We used to burn, hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil. So our people are deeply involved, and that information goes to the board. So all these decisions that I'm making are very much part of our DNA. I was in the last 3 days, as I mentioned, I was traveling in the West Coast, meeting and talking with many of our associates because this new venture with Amazon, I wanted to see them to see what their reaction would be. I thought a year back later they would have been concerned. Today they say amazing. And they agreed with me when I said that you either have to be a disruptor or be disrupted, and we want to be a disruptor.
You had already embedded that into your culture.
Exactly.
But I want to push on this again, but your communication leaders, are they partners with you in this?
Oh, absolutely. Every one of them. And again,
and how?
Well, because of the fact that we have a constant internal communications. I've always believed internal communications is even more critical than external communications. Mm-hmm. So the messages we have, we are as I said, we have one enterprise, which is fairly integrated, and the messages of communications has to go. Each one of our heads of our business unit is a head of our communications.
Got it. Okay, and so it sounds like you have many advisors, but is there a group or a particular person that you go to more often when you want to bounce off ideas, or you are going to step out there and perhaps take a position that could be controversial or have other people have different points of view? Who do you go to vet those?
Well, it all depends on what the ideas are, what it is. For instance, Ethan Allen our whole retail network started with independent families. Okay. Now, over the years, many of them retired, but we still have 30-40%, and they're very knowledgeable. The average association is 35 years, and many of them have been second, third generation. Many of them are very knowledgeable all over the country. So any great idea, I have to vet with them, talk to them. Yes. Even, of course, they helped me learn. Yeah. They were all there. Our board of directors have, a lot of different talents. We have a member who is the head of our governance, ran a university, has a great good judgment. The head of our compensation is a partner in a very major legal firm, also has a legal background. Our lead director worked with Andy. He was John Dooner. He ran one of the largest advertising companies. So we've got a marketing. So you got to bring people with different expertises, and that's why you got to utilize people.
Yeah. If a new CEO, a young CEO, came to you and said, "I'm thinking about taking this public stand, and I would love your advice. I think I've got the culture in a way that it would be accepted, but I'm still worried about this decision." What advice would you give that CEO?
Well, it has to be, they have to first communicate and make sure these ideas are sold internally.
Okay.
Very important. You got to sell them. It's not something that you cannot do these things. Now, this being a co-chair of this Muslim Jewish Council is something, not an ordinary way of our business.
Right.
It is something so extraordinary. But people thought it was natural because all the other things that we had done.
Have there ever been a decision or issue that you stepped out on that you said to yourself, man, I wish I hadn't gone there? Or has everything been so natural through these 30 years?
Well, you always, of course, learn. You can always learn to do things better. But no, I don't have any. I'm talking about certainly the business decisions we have made, things that we should have not made, in terms of we went and opened up design centers in Belgium. We shouldn't have done that. Those kind of things,
Sure.
But in terms of you're talking of the social activists, you see, if you don't have a culture right across your organization, then you are speaking as an individual. I'm speaking as Ethan Allen. As Ethan Allen, our total organization is behind it.
Yes. Do you experience at all, especially since it's part of your culture, employee activism? We talked about earlier today employees as ambassadors for the company, but also pushing the company to take a stand on certain issues. Has that occurred in your firm?
Well, in fact, when I mentioned this past week about the fact that this past week to all our designers that I was meeting with, that the stand that we are going to take on environmental, which is forget the regulations, we're going to keep on better, they cheered.
Yeah.
They cheered because of the fact even their customers want it.
That's right.
So it is good for them. So it really is, I don't think that there's anything that we do. I mean, we're talking of things that are common sense, sensible things.
Right. And again, we were talking earlier about the type of leadership that's needed in this world. What do you think, again, thinking about the evolution from where you started and where you are today, what the next generation of CEO will need to have? What traits and attributes will be important to leadership in the future?
Well, there are a number of things. First is there are certain principles that are time immemorial. They are given.
Like
First is, and this goes from the Hebrew Testaments to the Bibles to the Quran to every religion. First is the definition of leadership. A leader must have knowledge. Then leader must have courage, and finally must have wisdom. Right?
Yes.
You got to combine those things together. But there are a lot of leaders who have courage. Maybe they have even knowledge, but if they don't have wisdom, they can do things stupidly. Right. I'm not referring to anybody in particular. Okay, go ahead.
So someone earlier said that the entire MBA program should be blown up. How do you teach that? So the traits you're talking about seem innate to individuals. So if you're leaders growing up to run our future enterprises.
Yeah, you see, first I said these are three given.
Yes.
Then you take a look at, and you think that being a disruptor is something new. It's not new.
Right.
It's part of the world. So today, more leaders have to be, as CEOs, we better be the disruptor. Otherwise, we're going to be disrupted.
Right.
So that, I think, is an important thing that everybody has to say, because if you're going to wait, you're going to be disrupted. And, like, for instance, I mentioned this about Amazon. A year back, people would have thought, if we had waited a year from now, we would have been disrupted. Today, we are the leader in what we did. So leaders have to, and today you have to be more of a disruptor. In whatever enterprise you have, and you're going to say, what's going to happen to this enterprise, and who's going to disrupt it, and I better be the disruptor.
And so in order to do, I've heard once some people say that they come into the office on Monday like it's the first day on their job. Now, you are ingrained in the company. I understand what you're saying as far as being the disruptor, but where do you get the inspiration or ideas to constantly be reinventing your business?
Well, I mean, you listen.
Yeah.
You got to see what's happening around. As I said, knowledge means not just book knowledge. It's important. You've got to have knowledge about what's happening around you.
Right.
So you've got to be a student of the environment. So that's where you get it from. But you listen, you talk to, and and you have to talk to everybody. Yeah. When I go to our plants, as we did, and I see this 1,000 people, I tell them, I said, when I look into your eyes, you're a human being and not a number. I learned, think of this, that one little statement, when I go there and look in their eyes, all of a sudden they're not some number somewhere in North Carolina or in Vermont. They're a human being.
Yes.
How do we treat them? And they do a great job.
Sounds like you spent a lot of time with your employees and in the community, which I think is wonderful. We're going to open up for questions in just a moment, so please get your questions ready. After all that you have accomplished already, what is in your wish list now? I mean, what do you really want to get done now?
Well, first of all, I think I'm just getting started.
I love it.
But having said that, you have to have a balance in life.
Yeah.
You know, when we were raising our children, so 36 years, you know, I grew up in the mountains and we lived a simple life. You know, we lived at 8,000 feet and I learned how to ride a horse and play with the mud and all that stuff. I saw over here our children won't have that luxury.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking a different way.
Right.
So we ended up buying a farm up in the Hudson Valley, an apple orchard farm 36 years back. I think, and I'm trying very hard, we said, let's try to grow our children slowly. Because everybody's in a rush. I've got grandkids and I tell my children, they're growing, they do it so fast because they live in New York, you know, Manhattan. No, I'm just telling you, this is a part of life.
Yes.
So I think that, you know, you just have to take a day at a time and I think that, you know, it's like you got to have a passion and you got to do it better and better.
Yes. You talked about the farm. I'm assuming that's one of the ways you recharge. You'd have to with all the work that you're doing. What other ways? Give us advice, so those of us that are working at this level, what are your ways to recharge?
Well, I've got a great, great friend. They know it. Her name is Pashmina. She's my cat. She, you know, really, she loves. I take a walk with her every morning. She is. In other words, you got to have somebody, right?
Yes. Yes.
Somebody gives you.
So we all need to get a cat.
Or whatever you do, but you know, I'm just saying is these simple things of life.
Yes.
You know, you can go to some great resort and think you're going to relax. Right. I don't know. I don't. But I mean, I go and relax when I go to the farm. I do simple things by relaxing. Yeah. So simple things is what gives you an opportunity to. I still do, but when I was a little bit younger, I used to climb mountains. And the mountain teaches you that if you climb too fast, you get water in your lungs. The two options, keep on going and die, or come down and stabilize, and then go up again. So at Ethan Allen, I tell people, I said, nothing wrong in coming down. People think it's a failure coming down as an individual. No, I said, nothing wrong in coming down, stabilize, and then go up.
That's wonderful. It's great advice. Do we have questions from the audience?
Hi.
Oh,
Where are you?
Over here. Over on this side. Hi, I'm Tom Martin from the College of Charleston, and actually your board member, Mary Garrett, just joined our advisory council recently, and Mary, we appreciate your service. My question is about executive compensation.
Yes.
Because one of the issues that's really become a big factor among a lot of activists, employee activists and others, is the disparity between the average worker salary and the CEO salary.
Yes.
The time you became CEO, it was not nearly as dramatic as it has become over the last 30 years. Could you just speak about how you talk about that with the employees at your company and what you feel the field should be doing about that disparity that seems to be growing?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it has grown. I tell you this, I did something which is considered strange, but I did it about 3 or 4 years back. Based on my contract, I was getting more of a bonus than I thought I should. I gave it back. People thought it was crazy, almost $2 million in 3 years. But people appreciated it. You got to, as a CEO, it's hard to give things away. You got to make sure you don't overdo it. Because end of the day, how are you going to talk to people? Nobody has ever really raised an issue, but it is an issue. That is the difference between somebody making $40, $50 million and then somebody in the employee making $20,000 or less. It's a big issue, and I think as CEOs you have to think about it. You got to make sure you don't overdo it. Because how are you going to talk to people? How are you going to have 500 people hug you? Not possible if you do those crazy things. Not easy, but I think that one has to have the sense to make sure you keep a balance.
We have time for a few more questions, if there are any. Just one here.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I love the topic of CEO activism, so I'm thrilled to hear what you're talking about. If you had to, I know you have the 10 common sense principles or 10 principles, and I know 10 is a great number, but let's say you had 11 or 12. What would you add to the list? Because I'm curious, if thinking ahead, what might be missing?
Well, you know, these 10 gives you so much of flexibility. Really. You can, like for instance, one of them is we talked about the relative importance of priorities. Relative importance of priorities, you know, we are all confronted with so many priorities. What to do? So at Ethan Allen, my friends here know this, that all our organization has to work on 5 things at a time. I said, just tell me 5 important things to do. Don't tell me 20 or 15. So 5, if you do that, now under that, you know, you can sort of expand it. But I try to focus people on things that are more important because, unfortunately, as a human being, as human nature is, that a little ache in a foot is as important as a heartache. It isn't. So relative importance of priorities is critical. So within our 10, I think we have a lot of, you know, the flexibility of utilizing those kind of principles.
Is there one more question? Looks like one here.
Hi, can I give you a hug?
Absolutely. I mean, that is my, what you call, that's the rewards I get.
So that as we end this session, then we will have you line up for us all to give you a hug as we go. I don't think there's 500 people here, but maybe 300.
Okay.
Farooq, thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you,
and
Stacy.
thank you for allowing us to learn from your example.
You're good question, Stacy. Andy.